I'm really excited to have Stephen here as my first icon in the making.
Oh, wow.
Where he's going to share his journey and his principles and how we can, elevate our life, elevate our business, and serve others, because that's what we're here to do. We all have a purpose, we all have a why, and we're here to serve.
You set me up for a really high bar.
Yes, I did.
We're going to do our best to make sure that we get there.
So this show is going to look at case studies, interviews with icons in the making like Stephen, and it's going to be phenomenal. You'll be able to apply some of these principles to your business and your life and just become iconic in life and business. So Stephen, welcome.
Thank you.
Stephen is an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You're a speaker. You're an author.
Yes.
Wow, many hats.
Yes.
I understand that.
4 businesses.
4 businesses. You're just doing a phenomenal job.
Thank you.
Making changes in lives.
Thank you. That is our goal, yeah.
Of people that you come across,
Sure.
your clients.
Mm-hmm.
So share a little bit about your journey. How did you evolve to where you are today?
Wow. Where do I start?
Yeah, I know.
I'll do a summary. My first book came out March 2nd of 2015.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I have that book. It's awesome.
Yeah, you like it so far?
I like
awesome.
it. Yeah.
That's awesome. That makes me happy. We've been getting lots of emails and lots of correspondence with Life Change, and that just it's interesting because in writing that book originally, you have to kind of re-go through kind of what you've been through.
Exactly. Story.
Exactly.
Journey.
Yeah. So we intentionally try to go for this frame where we're trying to make sure that we have this lane, this stretch of lane that we're trying to stay inside of, and mine started. It didn't start there, but it seemed to really be the catalyst. Is when you lose everything, you actually appreciate anything, And for me, I started my first business while sleeping in a car.
Wow.
And that business is now in 3 states in the United States. Has about 400 team members across that. Some of those are vendors, some of those are actual, our salary staff. And the one thing that kind of shook out was that it was actually a construction company. Construction is what I knew, but it wasn't who I was going to become.
Isn't that funny?
How
do we start with what we know, but God has a bigger plan
it's
for
incredible.
Us, right?
Oh, it's incredible.
And the greatness that comes out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost mind-boggling how we evolve into this person, and that we never thought that existed, that we even knew that we could, right?
That's right.
So you talked about you started your first business in a car. Mm-hmm. Share a little bit about that. How did you get to this place?
Well, here's the funny thing. It's actually, it wasn't funny. It's interesting or complex. I had actually I had started a business when I was 18, a siding business. I had dropped out of high school to take care of my father. Unfortunately, our finances were in such a way that someone had to work. He was currently out of work, so I dropped out of high school. Went to go work at Golden Corral, which is a restaurant in the United States, as a waiter, a server, line operator, fry cook. Just kind of make sure we could pay our bills. We didn't have a family car. I saved up and bought the first family car. All that led me to then getting a job at a company called Waste Industries. And Waste Industries, my first experience ever being managed by professional managers. I'm young, but yet they put people under. I say under. I call it was under then. Now I understand it's surround.
Okay.
So people don't belong under you. They belong to surround you, and you also are supposed to surround others. So I kind of had this concept of what I thought life was supposed to be. I thought that any one of those was going to be my platform to success. I then lost the Waste Industries job because the department head and I had actually gotten into a large argument. And being young, immature, not knowing what I was doing, I was there for several years and literally decided I was going to walk out the door. What I had actually taken the time to kind of develop this mindset that I was going to not give up, perseverance-wise. So I immediately went back to what I knew, which was construction.
So you left that job, went into construction.
I immediately went back to construction. I'd done it off and on since I was 11. I've been buying my own school clothes and everything since I was 13. So, being by myself or being kind of the ambitious one has never hurt me. It's always come natural to me for some reason. I don't really know why. But I went to that first business, and the guy actually, Steve Myrick, you guys can read about in the book, was just a phenomenal mentor. he used to pull me down off the cruise, and he would share with me, hey, this is how you flip property. This is your grandfather and your father. If they had not struggled with alcohol so much, they would be multimillionaires, and all this kind of, like, it was constantly pouring into me. And of course, being young, when I'm 13, 14, 15, going kind of working on the summers, when he would share all this with me, it never, I was like in one ear and out the other. At least I thought.
Yeah.
And then
it was there somewhere.
Yeah, it was there. So I was soaking it up. But then I went back and started this first siding business. Steve thought a lot of me. He invested heavily in me. He went out and bought me all the tools, all the stuff, everything I was going to need to be successful to get started. And it was interesting because in that moment, I was happy. And what I also realized is I was going to serve my pride and my arrogance. So I was very young. This first business, I started making a lot of money very, very quickly. Started spending a lot of money very, very quickly. And within 1 year's time, I had actually walked off of that job. Now here's the funny thing. Steve had done everything right. He had believed into me, he had poured into me, he had given me all this intensive action that he was going to make something of me. And what did I do? I walked away from it. And I didn't walk away from what you might think. I walked away because my heart was broken. See,
that's a catalyst in its own.
Oh,
right?
It is, absolutely. I've had the pleasure of actually having you on our show. And one of the things we talked about was the importance of self-esteem.
Yes.
Going from selfish to selfless. And really esteem's in the middle somewhere.
Yes.
And so I began very young because I didn't have a lot of positive influence growing up. Broken home. Grandmother that did raise me passed away when I was 9 from brain cancer. So my entire world has always been shaken up.
Well, it's amazing that you were raised by your grandma. I was raised by my grandmother too.
Nice, high five.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
It's amazing. And we are so grateful when, sometimes our biological parents maybe not have the means, not around to really raise us.
Sure.
And then the grandparents step in
That's
and
right.
really shape us. And I really think that's divine.
Yeah, it is.
It's divine.
See, and I believe that too. I think a lot of folks they get hung up. I know I did for a little while. I got hung up on this philosophy that because my parents weren't there, I was somehow missing something. And your parents have value. They really do. What God later showed me was not only did it have value that they weren't part of my life then, but they have a greater value now. Because they've actually walked through their own journeys. They've already walked through their own things. They've already walked through their own distances of mindsets and perseverance and all this kind of stuff. And to be honest, think about it. Had my parents been there, I would have had a lot more to overcome. Because they weren't ready to parent.
Right.
They really weren't. They were still wrapped up in not being givers. They were more takers. Even when they went through their divorce, there was this big battle over myself and my little brother. And they would use my brother and myself as like a ping pong ball back and forth.
Wow.
He's not paying child support, so you can't see that. But meanwhile, mom was working hard as she could and stuff like that. But she hadn't dealt with her childhood. It's ironic because the grandmother who was so awesome to me was not a great mother to my mother. So one of the things I like to think about, or when I'm coaching folks, is we really dig into the intricacy of their wiring. We call it, you and I call it programming, to a degree. We get into that deep area of like, hey, look, who taught your mom or dad to be a mother or father? Who taught them? Well, I guess theirs did. Okay, well, tell me about theirs. Well, that was kind of messed up too. Well, all right, well, who taught them to be a good parent?
Because it's generational, right?
Yeah.
And, the Bible talks about the sins of the forefathers.
To the third generation.
Exactly, third generation. So it's in there and it keeps repeating until one day there's one individual to stand up and cut it off.
That's right.
Right?
And that's exactly what I think transpired. And my grandmother was a great mother to me. And that actually produced more anger, more resentment from my mother. She's like, what's going on? But to my grandmother, I was probably the do-over. She'd already known she'd already messed up. She'd already been through all, exactly, right? But to my mother, she's like, where's my mom? My mom, she's dealing with my mom doesn't love me. Self-esteem, poor self-esteem is funneling down the course. Got the same thing on my dad's side. It's no wonder I actually dealt with self-esteem. So anyway, so my mother and my father and that whole demographic, it created an environment of self-worth struggle. So when it manifests itself for the very first time in a powerful way, it started doing so in my relationships. We talked a lot about last time that when I had you on our show about the importance of the attraction, the law of attraction. John Maxwell calls it the law of attraction. You're going to attract what you are.
Yes.
And if you want something different, you have to become something different.
Exactly.
Right. And it was just like, hallelujah, out of nowhere, you know, and we're trying to understand this principle. But I actually walked off this job with Steve. He gave me everything. I was being financially successful, but my heart was broken. I remember I was breaking metal one time. This is putting on siding. And I was breaking metal and I was doing this kind of thing, but yet my world was falling apart. And I was breaking, and I couldn't stop crying.
Wow.
I was just sobbing. I'm like, and I didn't, at that moment, and I remember it like it was yesterday. In that moment, I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel depressed. I just felt off.
Wow.
And I wasn't sure why. But what I realized was I based my entire self-value on what I thought my girlfriend at the time's value of me was.
Right.
Rather than what God said I would be or what I would become. Mm-hmm. So
and that all has to do with lack
exactly.
of self-love, you know, not valuing you for who you are. Because
exactly.
You didn't have an example.
That's right, yeah.
You didn't have that that when you were growing up to really pull that out of you and to encourage you and to affirm you and, you know, you're going to be successful, you're going to be great, you're good at this, you know, you didn't have that, so therefore there was no self-worth to where you were at.
Exactly. Well, and that's the important part too, is that I'm a firm believer that in order to change your life, you have to be aware of your life.
Yeah, awareness is key.
Exactly.
You have to be at that level.
You need to acknowledge it. Exactly, because people struggle with awareness. They like to picture in your mind, if you will, a four-walled box. We call that the box of isolation. So a four-walled box of isolation is you're being pinned up by four things. Each wall represents something different. You're being pinned up by your past. You're being pinned up by your self-worth. You're being pinned up by your influences, and now you're being pinned up by what I call the environmental circumstance.
Right.
Okay, and inside the box is you. And you're so wrapped up in the four walls of this box that you can't get out of it, or at least you don't think you can because you've never been taught you could.
Exactly.
Again, force of change, force of influence, force of belief system, your force of habit, and all this kind of stuff, right? Well, then this interesting scripture, Isaiah 55, talks about specifically, your thoughts are not like my thoughts. Right? This is God talking to us. Hey, look, your thinking is not like my thinking. If you will learn to align yourself, align your principles with how I view things, or at least use me as a funnel source, like a sifter, if you will, if you're baking goods and you're kind of sifting out the stuff. Let your lens of sifting be me. Let me tell you what I see. Number one, I don't see you from the four walls that you see around yourself. I see you from above. I see to the left, to the right, to the north, to the south. I see it all. Learn to get outside of your circumstances. Bring yourself up. Come out of that, right? So now we go from isolation to positive solitude. We go into this learning phase of creativity and dreaming and re-engineering and, you know, asking yourself questions. You know, I was on stage not long ago in a group in Florida, and we were talking about life and change, and you know, I've become God has created in me a passion for change and life change and making sure people can have the best of what they want, which is powerful in itself. But on stage, this epiphany hit me out of nowhere.
Wow.
And this epiphany was this. This will rock your world if you actually ponder it. The epiphany was this. The brain, the way the brain works, your brain has to answer a question. If you ask a question, it has to answer it. Okay? I know that didn't rock your world. Okay? Here's what can rock your world if you really kind of create it and then take ownership of it.
Take notes. Deep.
The questions you ask yourself determine the answers you get. Mm-hmm. So if your brain has to answer the question, ask just any question yourself. You know, you could say, do I want lunch today? Yes or no? Okay? In your mind, you're thinking, well, I'm going to say yes or no. Yes, I want lunch. No, I don't want lunch.
Right.
Okay? However, but if you change the question, what type of lunch do I want? I know it's literally that simple. Mm-hmm. The human brain has to answer the question. It doesn't know anything else.
No, it doesn't.
It only knows to search for information. It only knows to search for an answer. So the trick behind changing your awareness, changing your life, and changing your self-esteem is the questions you ask.
Hear that? It's the kind of questions that you ask. So to get a different answer, you have to ask a different question.
Right.
And then also go deeper.
Right, absolutely.
Keep going deeper. At least
Oh yeah,
5.
getting the different answers is just the tip of the iceberg.
You gotta go.
That gets you to the next stage
Exactly.
of awareness, right?
Yes,
We talk about different levels of awareness. We talk about moving, because really what life is really about is going from selfishness to selflessness. Because if you stay in selfish, you'll never impact the lives of others, which means you don't create a legacy, you don't create any kind of long-lasting change. You'll be here and gone tomorrow, because life is just but a second, according to the Bible, which is true. I'm already halfway done with mine, unfortunately, at least I think I am. You know the answer, right? However, if we move towards selflessness, we create legacy.
Yes.
We create long-lasting influence. We can actually do something, say something, inspire something that wasn't there
Transform
before.
lives, right?
Michelangelo,
Yeah.
what was he inspired by? What if he had stayed selfish?
Right.
We wouldn't have these great works of art. He wouldn't have been the inventor, the artist, and everything else he became.
Very true. And you just brought up a very important thing, legacy. And iconic brands are all about legacy.
Sure.
They leave a legacy. Now, one of the things that really stands out for an iconic brand is they have a bigger purpose beyond money.
That's right.
Now, money is great, right? And we all want to make lots of it.
Dave Ramsey calls it certificates of appreciation.
There you go. Because we need money in order to affect change in the lives of others. We need money to be flowing through us, be flowing through our business. So there's nothing wrong with money, and there's nothing wrong with lots of it. Okay, don't get me wrong. But you in business, when you come into business, you need to have a purpose beyond
absolutely.
the money. You just can't come into business, well, I want to make lots of money. Number one, it's not going to be successful. Number two, it's not going to be fulfilling.
Right.
Number three, you're not going to invoke change.
No, not at all.
And number four, you're not going to change lives.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So that legacy comes in when there's
Yep.
a purpose beyond money.
So if we can get as a people, as a business owner, as a brand, to live your life on a mission. I was once asked, I was on a radio show not too terribly long ago, and they were asking, how do you get up the way you get up? Our own team asks me all the time, it's like, where's your off button?
Right.
And I'm like, guys, I'm on a mission. I have a mission says I have a limited time to get something done, and these are the things I want to achieve in it.
Yes.
Okay? So living your life on a mission might be different than your mission statement. Your mission is a how kind of mindset, how you're going to get there. But living your life on a mission is the intentional focus that you put towards the mission.
You're driven.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So if the mission is to change lives, then I understand as a business owner, now that I own a few, I understand as a business owner, you have to create margin. Rabbi Daniel Lapin actually says, where there's no margin, there's no ministry.
True.
You can't minister if you don't have assets in order to make that happen. However, you have to inspire change. You have to add value to people's lives before you can ever ask for a dollar.
Yeah, definitely. You gotta
So
lead
it's,
with value.
again, it's the awareness. And I learned that most when I did walk away from Steve the first time. Because I said it once before we were chatting, and I was talking about how you don't appreciate anything until you've lost everything.
Exactly. Yes.
And in that moment, I had no idea what I was walking away from.
Wow.
Because I was so brokenhearted. I had been involved in toxic relationships all the way up into that time. And I didn't really break that cycle until my late 30s, which, hey guys, I'm still in my late 30s. I got one more year left. You know, but I didn't break that cycle. But when I walked away from Steve, I went into a severe year of depression. See, it wasn't Steve's choice. It was my choice that led me to sleeping in a car, ultimately.
Right.
It was my choice of leaving, my choice of not growing, my choice of standing still, my choice of not choosing to make a different choice, as strange as that sounds, running through that, you know, and that became the struggle, you know, and a year later I found myself, God working in my life, trying to get me healed.
Right.
He was trying to grow me. I took myself out of toxic seed with the ending of that relationship, decided, hey, I'm done with relationships for a while. I'm going to focus and plant, okay? Now, what I also did was I got very prideful and very arrogant before the depression hit, before that toxic relationship. But I did it to myself. It was my choice. It was my arrogance. It was my pride. It was thinking, hey, look, I've got a great thing going. I'm making money. I'm 18 years old. I'm going to hit my dreams, you know, and because a secret part of me just wanted to prove everybody else wrong.
Yeah. I know.
You know,
I've
so
been there.
when you get there, you're like, hey, look, I've got it going on. I've got the money. I've got this. I've got that. And then you start identifying your self-value with the money and the things that you have, which obviously ends you to nowhere. And I thank God every day for that humbling experience. I thank God for that relationship. I thank God for that state of sorrow and grief and guilt and pride and all that stuff that I was facing. I thank Him for that because that now created something different. So here's the cool thing. I know I get long-winded and I can't help it, but I get excited about stories. In the year that it took me to go back, okay, and get back on track, get my life, by that time I had already been to caught about taking my life. I had at the tail end of that, I'd given my life to Christ at a litter box, which is a funny story you guys can read about in the book. I mean, it's just, wait till you get to that part of it. I've heard I'm very good with the imagery on that one.
Right, wow.
But I get back, I find myself back on a framing crew working for the same man that I betrayed.
Wow, the original,
the very
job,
same guy, because my dad was still working for him.
Okay.
And I couldn't find employment at the time. And my dad said, hey, look, I think Steve will let you on the framing crew. So check out this. I was in an environment coming back on where he would drive around the block and I would go hide. Every time I would see his vehicle, I would go hide behind the house. I wasn't ready to deal with him yet.
Right.
I still felt guilty.
And embarrassed.
This man loved me and I betrayed him. You know, I didn't betray him intentionally. It was more of a product of subconscious reasoning than it was a conscious reasoning. But I still hurt him. And I wasn't ready to deal with that yet until a Friday afternoon happened. There was one house here. My dad and the crew and whoever are framing the house. And over here, I'm watching guys install siding, which is the business I had before. And they're using my old tools, my old equipment. So it's kind of like rubbing salt in that wound.
Yeah.
And then, as part of my duties, I had to go from this house to correct a framing mistake on a garage post so the guys could wrap it. So I'm actually having to go back. So God is like saying, all right, the first thing I need you to do is I need you to be aware and I need you to be able to reckon your past so I can give you a future.
Wow. Deep.
Reckon your past so you can have a future. So he takes me back to this garage door jam and we're going through this thing. And I overhear these guys, and they're talking negatively about Steve, and they're saying, well, he doesn't pay, and all this kind of stuff. All this I knew to be absolutely false. I knew that they were smoking their stuff away, because I'd been around the redneck environment of North Carolina for a long time, and I just got so mad. I was so mad. I was so angry, and literally, I remember correcting the garage door, walking back over. Going back to work and just banging on the house and just like putting driving nails, and I'm sure that when it's like this, I was,
wow,
because they were going to hurt the man that I care deeply about, Steve. The problem is they were going to do the same exact thing that I did. So what was I really facing?
Wow, you were facing something that you had to deal with at that moment.
Yeah.
It's an amazing that the mirror.
Yeah.
We all face mirrors, and when it's that time to really face
Yep.
and change that whatever it is,
Catalyst.
we see it in front of us.
That's right.
It's time to deal with this.
Yep. Because here's the funny thing is, even in that moment, I didn't recognize the correspondence until years later writing the Journey Principles
And
book.
you don't usually do, right?
Right. So the cool thing is I finally, in that moment, in that anger, this is when anger, God even talks about having, there's a place for healthy anger, but it's not vengeful anger. Healthy anger can be a manifestation for change. The other kind of anger is an anger for destruction. But what it did do is it gave me the courage to talk to Steve. So Steve is coming around the blocks, and something he would do on Fridays, he would actually pass out the checks to the windows of his car. Now, for years, my dad, because he was the foreman of the framing crew, would go and grab the checks, bring them back, and hand them out to everybody. So my dad goes and gets the checks and comes back, and my check was a couple $100, I think $262.73.
Wow, you remember those details.
I do, and I'll tell you why. But in that moment, I was so angered. The guys that I had overheard talk about Steve also said that if they didn't get their full payment for the house that they were working on, they were not going to come back Monday. Okay? So they were going to eventually walk off the job and let Steve deal with the problem of getting it finished and all this kind of stuff. The interesting thing with that is because I was so upset when Steve came back around. Finally, I hadn't talked to this man in over a year. I broke his heart. I walked away, and every time I had an opportunity before that, I hid from him.
Yeah.
he came to me, well, I came to him actually. My dad had come back with the checks. And I think I shocked my dad because he was coming back with the checks and he handed me mine and I kept walking towards Steve.
Wow. So you're gonna face that giant.
Yeah, I'm gonna face that giant. And it was interesting because I get to the car and I knock on the window because Steve used to use his white Jeep Grand Cherokee as his little mobile office. And one of the things I remember most about was when he'd roll that window down, you had this big burst of cold air come out, like this big air condition. This is fall time, so in this case it was going to be heat. So he'd roll down the window, it was like, whoo, nice little warmth. And he kind of looked at me, he goes, and he only asked me one question. He said, "How's your head, boy?" I can't say it just like him because he had a little twang to it.
Right.
This man was like me. He was 5 foot nothing, but he was brilliant. He cared more about people than people ever knew that he cared about them. It was nothing for him to go to a store and leave a big tip on a table for a single mother.
Wow.
Nothing for someone to get a gift and them not know it came from him. I watched him buy 3 families one Christmas, the entire Christmas for the families, for people that worked for him because of financial struggles that the other people had. So Steve had already instilled in me a certain level of desiring to give. But when I went to Steve and he said, "Hey boy, how's that head? How's your head, boy?" I answered him in one statement. I said, "It's getting better, sir."
Wow.
That's paraphrasing a little bit there,
Yeah,
but
so what did you think he meant when he said, "How's that head?" What was he saying?
he was trying to figure out where I was at. He's trying to understand, is this boy healing? Has he learned his lesson? Has he let go of pride? Has he let go of arrogance? He's obviously working on the guilty part because he's standing in front of me. But the funny about Steve and I is in that one sentence from both of our points, we said a whole mouthful because of the relationship we had. You know?
Yeah. Unspoken word.
Exactly. So here's the thing. Here, there I am, broken down t-shirt, shorts. I'm sitting there facing my biggest fear, which is talking to that man. Also struggling with what I'd heard from the other guys. Knowing I had nothing of my own. I was just freshly out of sleeping in a car. I mean, just like, we're talking days. We're not talking weeks, we're not talking months, we're talking days. Out of sleeping in a car or on random couches wherever I could find it. I was too embarrassed that I would hit that level to tell my family. Otherwise, I probably would have had shelter.
So didn't know where you were.
No.
Wow.
I was ashamed. The worst thing someone can do with shame is avoid it. If you share it, people can help you.
Exactly.
But you have to share it safety. I'll give them that point. But there I am, and I'm standing there, covered in sweat, covered in dirt, covered in grime. And I basically tell him the story. Hey, look, I was over here. This is what I heard. What do you think? You know, can I if they decide that they don't want to come back, can I have my old position back? And he first kind of laughed and kind of giggles. How are you going to do that? I'm like, and I was like, and before I could respond, he goes, "I sold all the equipment to those guys. So the equipment you think was yours that I bought you is now theirs because I sold it. I can't take it from them." Right? So now I'm facing, I have a nail apron, 2 white pouches and a hammer and a nail.
And
that's it. I don't have scaffolding. I don't have ladders. I don't have people. I don't have resources. I had no money. My $262.73 check that I hadn't even cashed yet. And the interesting thing is he said this. He goes, "Look, if those guys don't come back, if you're willing to dig, I'll let you finish that house and we'll see where it goes from there."
Wow.
Like, think about it. This is a man who bought me everything. I walked away from it. How many times have God given us everything and we walk away from it? And then the illustration, and all of a sudden we're back being faced with God and kind of where we're at. What's going on? Sitting there, and then he says yes. He laughed when he said it.
Right.
But I think he saw something in my eyes that was different than before. I had faced some of my greatest struggles in life head on. I didn't do it without stress. I didn't do it without grief, without sorrow. I didn't do it without the elements of life that I thought were going to take me out. But when I did face it, I did it with diligence. And rather than try to avoid my obstacles, I made them part of who I was.
Right.
I took on my obstacles so I could take on not just the suffering, but also the perseverance that came from the suffering.
So now your life lessons
Exactly.
from the struggle, the pit that you were in, is now coming up to the forefront.
That's right.
And you recognize
Yeah.
it. So there's that awareness.
Yeah, exactly. So now we're working, so Steve says yes. He drives away. My dad overhears the conversation. He's like, what did you just do?
Was he angry?
No, he wasn't angry. I think he was terrified.
Wow.
Because my dad had a business and it failed. Now my dad was a different kind of business person than I was. Thought he knew it all. My dad's a good guy, don't get me wrong, but all business owners like to believe we have it all figured out, we have it all together. We don't realize that we need to ask more questions. Many of us need to have coaches ourselves.
True.
So, we get stuck there. And then the next thing that happened was very interesting. Once he agreed to do that, the car pulled away. My father tries to talk me out of it. I tell my dad, no, this is the direction I'm going. My dad opens the back door to his old beat up van that Steve technically owned, and he grabs his tool belt out of it. Now keep in mind, we'd already started putting the tools away because it's Friday at 2 o'clock, and that's what we did. You got your check, and you went to go enjoy your weekend. My dad we open the back doors, my dad pulls the tool belt outside, his actual tool belt. I still have my nail apron on. He pulls out a nail gun, he pulls out a nail gun, he plugs in the compressor, and then he's like, well, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna need scaffolding.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, all right. So he and I walked over and started pulling lumber out of the trash piles. See, everybody likes to think that we've talked about this before, that you have to have this office, you have to have all this stuff to make a business.
Exactly.
All you need to have is a willingness to grow, a willingness to drive, and a willingness to make it happen. If you'll take those elements, and because the grow is going to require you to constantly be growing. It's constant. It doesn't fail. I'm still growing. I'm still learning.
Yes.
I'm still seeking for new knowledge. I'm still seeking for new wisdom. But if you'll take those elements, imagine what can happen. So here's what did happen. We started building scaffolding out of the scrap piles of the wood piles, the trash piles.
Amazing.
Okay? I spent my entire check buying these red pump jack bucks that went on the poles and basically for the walk boards.
Right.
I rented a brake machine. I spent my entire paycheck doing it. And once it was gone, it was gone.
Wow.
So not only that, but I fully engaged. We talked about it earlier. Diving in both feet. I jumped in. Had no idea where I was going, no idea where the safety net was. But God had already told me when I was walking away from Steve's Jeep. I heard almost audibly, almost a whisper. It just said "Custom Home Exteriors."
Wow. Just.
And it was. My dad was terrified. I was completely at peace. Why? Because I was getting ready to take on what I was asked to do by him,
Yes.
and not something that I created for myself.
Yeah. Right. Was divinely deposited.
Exactly.
In you. So now your greatness is coming out.
Yep.
It's like he's forming, he's shaping the greatness. Bringing it
Joseph in the Bible,
Yeah.
King David in the Bible, there's not been a single important person in the Bible that did not go through an element or an important matter of suffering first.
Yeah, they went to the pit.
Yeah.
And I've shared my pit
Yeah,
with you.
yeah.
And your pit is amazing. And then we've come out.
Yeah.
You're experiencing the breakthrough.
Right. And now custom home exteriors over the next 17 years. I went from finishing one house to doing 4 by myself before I ever hired anybody, any help of any kind. I had no choice. Because I was barely not making enough to eat, let alone go back and pay thousands of dollars of debt that I incurred during the toxic relationship. The next 17 years starts a journey where CHE is now a multi-million-dollar business in 3 states with close to 400 team members across 3 states. Now here's what I learned about it. It's very easy to think that the leadership, the business, the wisdom, all that came into me as the business owner. It's not true. I have certain elements that I definitely brought to the table. But 3 things really happened. First of all, I learned how to build and control my subconscious and my conscious mind.
Which is so important.
Right.
That's another show, people, okay?
The second thing I learned how to do was to actually evaluate, respect, and inspire my team. Okay? The third thing I did was I realized what CHE really was. So from the outside looking in, our customers have come to us before. Why are you guys so different? What makes you guys different?
So what made it different?
CHE doesn't focus on siding.
Okay.
CHE focuses on building people while they're doing the siding.
See.
We practice what we preach. It became God. I told you about the essence when God came to. I felt like God was coming to me saying custom home exteriors. What I didn't share was He also said it would be for a season. And I didn't know what that meant.
You just trusted. You just believed. seat and you just...
Well, and that, and about every 5 years, I'm like, is it time yet? Is it time yet? Is it time yet? And eventually, he finally said, I kind of felt like he finally said, dude, when I'm ready for you to go the next step, I will take you there.
Exactly. Relax.
Be a master of what I've given you. Be a master of what I've given you. Master what you can.
Yes.
Then you're ready for new knowledge. It's not until you master the subconscious and the conscious mind to a degree that you're actually able to accept new wisdom and knowledge.
There you go.
So we're digging through all this stuff, but CHE becomes this massive thing. CHE is successful because of the journey.
Right.
There would be no Journey Principles book had there not been the journey.
Exactly.
There would be no Journey Principles Institute that is now impacting lives, thousands of lives on a daily basis across 42 countries.
Wow.
Had there not been the journey.
Exactly. The journey is important.
The journey is.
The journey is. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey.
Exactly.
Because during the journey, we experience the pit, you know, that, and then we take from the pit the breakthrough,
That's right.
the life lessons.
That's right.
And now how can we use that to impact change and transform lives?
That's right.
And so how are you doing, and now how you've taken all of that life lessons and all that experience now to impact change?
Keep asking these hard questions.
Yeah. So now you're traveling as you've evolving to a coach.
Coaching. It's a new word. Coaching, not coaching, but coaching.
Yeah.
And really, that makes more sense. I'm all about inner culture on the inside. I'm all about culture on the outside for the business. The opportunities there. I'm very, very good about helping the business owners, pastors, those people like that understand their own mind. A lot of those people have spent a lot of time caring so much for others that they've forgotten to work on themselves, which is the greatest hindrance I've actually made in myself, is I focused so much on building the business that I didn't build myself. So when my business was ready to succeed, I was the limiting factor.
See, and this is one of the key things about a brand, your business and you,
Yep.
having that brand, because your business is an extension of you.
Yeah, that's right.
So if there's an area over here that needs to be
Sure.
modified, needs to be tweaked, needs to be brought up to a level, it's going to impact your business
That's
in
right.
some
right.
way, right?
That's absolutely right.
So what did you do to sort of tweak that area that you needed to?
First of all, is I became aware of it. We've talked about that before.
Right.
I acknowledged where I was.
Awareness is key.
I acknowledged where I've been, and I also acknowledged where I wanted to go.
So now you're looking forward to the future.
Exactly.
The vision, which is
Exactly.
important
Yeah.
because we need to have that vision
Yeah.
in front of us. We need to know where we're going.
That's right.
We don't always know the how.
That's right.
And somebody's not knowing the how is not really important. Sometimes we get caught up, oh my God, how am I going to do this?
Yeah.
But really, sometimes that's not, those details you don't really need to know
That's
those
right.
now. But you
That's
know
right.
that you're on a journey, you have, and you're heading towards that particular destination.
I think, yeah, absolutely. And 3 key steps are obviously acknowledgement. So we say it this way in the Journey Principles. So I'll typically close every show with heal, grow, and go. Understand, no matter who you are, no matter where you've been, that there's something you probably have to heal from.
Yes. And then from our healing
Comes growth.
growth. Exactly.
So it's the desire for growth. You're never done with it. The moment you're done growing is the moment you'll stay stagnant. You'll plateau.
And maybe you're ready to pass on.
Exactly.
Because in this life, there's always something to learn.
That's right.
Right?
That's
You never
right.
stop learning.
Absolutely not.
Right? And entrepreneurship is the greatest teacher.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
Well, because it forces you to deal with people.
Yes.
People interact with a brand. People interact with a business. People interact with the platform. People interact with the team. People interact with the business itself, like CHE, even the logo, for example, it was intentional. When I chose that logo, I hand drew the first one. And when we came back to, quote, make it more, as we grew, it came to need to have a little more corporate looking.
Yeah.
Still didn't change the logo. We tweaked it, but the logo has always been the same because the logo actually says something about the business. It tells people what they can expect and what they're going to get long before they actually get it.
Right. And which is all part of branding.
Exactly.
Right? Being
Exactly.
strategic in your element of your logo is very important.
Right.
So, and it's not people get caught up on the logo, but
Yeah.
it is just one.
It's one
part.
facet.
It's one facet.
Yeah.
So it's great that your logo does tell the message of what your business stands
Sure.
for. That's really important.
And then the final thing is where are you gonna go? You've healed. You're now growing. Where are you gonna go? Where are you gonna go? Who are you gonna inspire? How are you going to affect life change?
Exactly.
It has to, when you go from selfishness to selflessness, which becomes far less about me and more about we, then you figure it out.
Yeah.
So everything we do at the Journey Principles, everything we do at CHE still, I developed a team that runs the day-to-day operation at CHE very, very well. I'm still engaged in the business, but the freedom, because I focus so much on them and their development and their growth, allowed me to have the freedom to now go inspire and affect life change in other areas through the Journey Principles.
Awesome. And freedom is so important. That's really
Sure.
something that's really important to me and what I share with my clients.
Sure.
You know, having been a lifestyle entrepreneur, which
Mm-hmm.
means that you have a business,
Mm-hmm.
but it's built around a particular lifestyle now that gives you the freedom to
That's right.
really do what you want to
Yes.
do and how you want to serve.
Yes.
So whether that's, you know, serving your clients, traveling,
Mm-hmm.
you know, doing whatever that brings joy to you.
Right.
And your business now is built around that.
That's right.
To be able to serve others and to serve you at the same time.
That's right.
So that's pretty awesome.
It's the cool thing is you know, we were talking about how you inspired. So I'd mentioned earlier how I asked God, I kept going, hey God, is it time yet? When can I do this? Can we do it now? Can we do it now? Can we do it now? You know what he said the last time I asked him? He changed his answer.
Yeah?
This is pushing a year ago.
Really?
He said, prepare.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome.
And now, this will blow your mind. So CHE has a numerous amount of team members. The Journey Principles Institute, we started with just myself and my awesome wife. I could honestly not do anything without Karen. Hey baby, if you're listening, I love you. You're awesome. If I wasn't ready, I would not know what to do with the team. So what happened is when we started this, the book became a catalyst to a curriculum. The curriculum, normally you're like, well, I need to have the business, I need to determine my product, so on and so forth. This time I had a product and no business.
Right.
So I went back, I had to go backwards. The good thing is I had all the experience of how to create that. So the book became the curriculum became videos, videos became social media, once I got out there teaching the message, sharing the message, I found out there was a big yearning for it. We went from 12 people on Facebook inside of 5 months to over 50,000 in 42 countries.
Wow. That's
42 countries.
Spectacular.
And and it's because people need hope. They need change. They need inspiration. They need to be empowered, which is why you working with women the way you do is so important. Because everyone needs a safe place, which is essentially fertile soil. If the safe place is fertile soil and you are the seed, then the only other thing you need is the influence. And now you can grow.
Yes.
So the Journey Principles as a whole, that whole dynamic, it would blow your mind to know how many volunteers we have. How many unpaid team members, not saying I don't plan to pay them, I want to get them all on, right? Yeah. But we're developing, so I'm actually in this weird situation where I have a very stable, very good business, and now I'm creating another one from scratch again. But we have so many volunteers that just believe in what we're doing. Simon Sinek calls it, they believe what we believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and he's big. He wrote the book about why.
Oh, I love Simon Sinek.
He is awesome.
Yeah, you definitely have to check that book out. There's a YouTube clip on there as well.
So, and you made a very important point.
Sure.
That they have tapped in to the bigger why of your business.
Yep.
You have a cause.
Yes.
Right?
Mission.
And exactly.
Mission.
Yeah. And your message now
Yeah.
resonates with your tribe.
Exactly.
So it's bringing all of these individuals
Yep.
to you because your message is so resonates with
Yep.
them and it's bringing transformation to them. So it's really powerful.
I think the other thing that drives a lot of the success is we're very transparent and vulnerable. When people read the Journey Principles book, they're not going to believe how open and how vulnerable I am. But I learned a long time ago that the vulnerability and the transparency is actually what talks to another person's spirit.
Yes, because now they can understand the pit. You're going through the pit. They're going through the pit.
Yeah.
I've been through the pit.
Exactly.
Right. So they can relate. You become, oh wow, he's experienced that. Well, I've experienced something like that. So there's that bond that's formed. So they become to know, like, and trust you.
And the most important thing about trust is to always keep it.
Yes.
Everything that we do is for them. The other thing about that trust piece is we have to be cognizant as business owners. People like to think, and I'll have to close with this because we have to get to the next thing, but the morality of a business owner can take them out. There's no such thing as this compartmentalization that people like to believe. Integrity is wholeness. It comes from a Greek word, okay? And it means wholeness. You are a whole person. Everything that goes into you is going to flow out of you at some point in time in a given situation. You, as a business owner, your brand, your awareness, your people, your team has to always be at the forefront. It always has to be present in your day in and day out reactions and actions.
Yes.
Because the moment you break that trust with your tribe, with your group, with your people, as Jesus calls it, I go and make fishers of men, so to speak. Mm-hmm. His vision, the best vision statement that ever happened.
True.
Right? As that happens, you lose something. And oftentimes when you break that trust, it doesn't come back.
No.
So as the business owner, you are the brand. You are to be the brand at all times, which means you can't get in a vehicle and go out and go drink as much as you want and go, it doesn't matter if you just bought the nicest car on the planet. It can still be damaged.
Yeah, definitely.
You can end a life by accident. If you can't go on trips and mess around with on your spouse. Mm-hmm. You can't go home and act one way and then go to work and act the other way, because eventually they're going to come to light.
Yeah.
And once that trust is gone, think about it. One of the most successful people in the world was Lance Armstrong.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
He went through the pit, went through a lot of suffering, fought testicular cancer, overcame that, went on to win all these Tour de France's. And then there was these rumors about whether or not he did this or didn't do that. He lost half his tribe. That Live Strong brand that was so powerful and so strong,
no, it's not as strong.
is almost non-existent because of the loss of trust. You have to be your brand. You've got to be it at all times.
Yep.
So
always. Oh my gosh, this has been so awesome, Stephen. So how can, our listeners or audience connect with you and get your awesome book as well?
Oh, thank you. Wow. They can visit me at StephenScoggins.com. That's STEPHEN, Scoggins, SCOGGINS.com. JourneyPrinciples.com will come up live. I'm hoping August 1st. That is actually going to be like an online school where everything we teach, everything we share will actually be there for people to actually take in at their own level, which would be kind of cool. You can follow me on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, so on and so forth. Yeah, Periscope. Yeah, I've been informed I have to get the Periscope because apparently I talk too much. So those are the great sources. And yeah, I mean, I would be humbled and honored if the Journey Principles book can actually help you in your walk and their journey and just developing a life that matters. Awesome. Be a life change for somebody else.
Great. So great to have you on. And thank you for joining us.